So as if things couldn't get any worse for Bethesda, it seems like they are. Just a couple of days ago, I told you guys how a law firm was investigating Bethesda over their refund policy. The argument effectively being made here was Fallout 76 is a defective game on launch as a result of all the bugs, glitches, and other things that are present in it, and many users began posting that they were unable to get refunds for this game, and in turn that is illegal. They were sold a defective product and they are entitled to a refund under various laws. Now of course, depending on your location, those laws are different, but some countries have laws that if you do sell products to people in their country, you of course have to abide by those laws. Most notably Canada and Australia have laws like this where you can't be sold a defective product and then also be denied a refund, even if that product is digital. Well, as an update to that story, it seems like that same law firm is also investigating Bethesda for their deceptive practices about the canvas bag, or really not canvas bag, that was included with the Power Armor edition of the game. So explicitly what they write is, we have received feedback from multiple owners of Fallout 76 who purchased the Power Armor edition, a $200 collector's edition of the game that was advertised to include a canvas bag. Upon delivery, purchasers found a bag to be made of nylon, contrary to Bethesda's representation of the material and contrary to purchasers' expectations of the product. Fans who reached out to Bethesda received an explanation saying, due to the availability of materials, we had to switch to a nylon carrying case in the Fallout 76 Power Armor edition. There are multiple Reddit threads detailing fans' dissatisfaction with the set, and the Amazon page for the product still lists the included bag as made out of canvas. This is a classic bait and switch. Similar to their practices with the Bethesda refund policy, here too they are taking user complaints. You could actually contact them. Right now they are conducting an investigation, probably to see the viability of a lawsuit. But this canvas bag situation, they actually made an online questionnaire that they do confirm is confidential to see if you're even eligible to make a potential claim. It asks you about a variety of information pertaining to this game, when you purchased it, if you got a refund or were denied one, things like that. And in the end, it does ask you to actually submit some information to get added to the retainer list. But even beyond that, something really important to keep in mind, I kind of mentioned this in my other video today, but if you purchase the Power Armor Edition, Bethesda is offering people 500 atomic points, or atoms, whatever they're called. If you intend to actually try and get some kind of refund or some other service in the future, do not accept those points. As many a Reddit post actually have pointed out, that could be viewed as compensation for the bag mismatch. Like Bethesda has made you whole again, which is kind of what you would do in court anyway. Now of course, if you don't care, if you don't think you would want to be a part of a class action lawsuit, if that for some reason did end up popping up, then sure, take the points. All of this honestly does seem pretty crazy to me. A few people have actually tried to get refunds or return their Power Armor edition. It seems like some people are having success with Amazon, even if they downloaded the game already, but I highly doubt Bethesda is going to accept any of those returns, or at least they're not doing it as of right now, and I haven't heard of other success with other retailers. That's the factual side of this video, just what happened. Hopefully you guys can form your own opinions based off that. And now if you want to hear my juicy opinion on it, I think this is just unacceptable and kind of deserved. It's one thing to make a bad game, and I think most people would agree that Fallout 76 released in an unacceptable state. There was definitely some sketchy or almost misleading practices around the pre-orders and things like that, but at the end of the day, up until the game's release, you did have the option to cancel your pre-order and get a full refund. And that's okay. Good developers make bad games all of the time. It happens. What's not okay though, and what doesn't get nearly as much of a pass from me, and hopefully not from you, is lying to consumers. That's not something that just happens on accident. It seems like it had to be somewhat of a conscious decision to not send out that email, to not say to people, oh yeah, by the way, we're actually going to switch from the advertised canvas bag to a nylon bag. And honestly, more so than anything else, I just don't understand, how did Bethesda not see this as a problem? Like, I'm sure this problem is exacerbated by the fact that there's so much other negative press and bad news around Fallout 76, a lot of it very much so deserved. That makes this story another stack on the pile, which I think makes it definitely get a lot more attention, as opposed to if the game was some great release that was getting amazing review scores and all of the practices otherwise were really good. But even though the other lawsuit by this company does have two sides to it, and I feel like even though I don't agree with two sides, most people that are reasonable can see both sides. The argument definitely can be made that Fallout 76 is not a defective product, that you can play the game and it works mostly, that no, you are not entitled to a refund. I don't necessarily agree with that side, but I do understand that argument. But advertising you're going to sell somebody one thing and then actually sending them after they paid for it a different thing isn't really as dichotomous. I don't really see both sides of that argument. This is a case of lying to consumers, and I really feel like that's pretty much the whole story there. There's no middle ground, there's no like, oh, but it's okay for this reason. No, they said they were going to give me one thing, I gave them my $255, and I got a different thing. And for that reason, I could see the likelihood of a lawsuit around the bag situation, or bag gate as some people are calling it, way more likely than with the refund policies around the defective product argument that this law firm is also investigating. So much so in fact that if this went forward, if there actually was a class action lawsuit, I could almost see myself participating. After all this, I feel like something has to change. Whether it involves firings at Bethesda, which I personally view as pretty likely at this point, unfortunately it'll likely be someone that's lower level, probably a scapegoat firing rather than the people actually responsible here, which I have to imagine is occurring at an executive level. But all of this bad PR, and especially if this lawsuit goes forward, the amount of bad PR coming from that just has to play a role in devaluing their brand. They're going to sell less copies of future games because Bethesda is slowly becoming the next EA. They're pissing off consumers so bad that they don't want to support them. Even some of their hardcore fans don't want to support them. Now who knows, we'll see what happens in 6 months. If all of this blows over, Bethesda starts updating the game, starts pleasing people, doing better consumer practices. But as of right now, if you look at their actions over the past month, they are definitely not trending upwards. Either way, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. A little bit of a shorter one, but I did want to get a video out on this ASAP, especially so those of you who could potentially participate in this kind of class action, if it happens, don't accept those 500 compensatory atoms. But either way, before we end things off, I want to give a psychology fun fact of the day, this one being pretty relevant to something that happened on YouTube recently. If you don't know, fairly recently, YouTube actually added a new feature as stories. If you want to check out mine, I guess you have to be subscribed and go in the app. I'll post one just because. It's like the stories you see on Instagram, and I think they're on Snapchat or something. I don't know. I'm not really big on the social medias these days. Those YouTube comments give me my fix for social interaction, although you can follow me on Twitter if you want to do that. But my point is, actually last semester I took this class called Human Factors. It's more or less a UX design class taught by a very wonderful person that works at IBM. He mostly worked at IBM, but then one day a week he just taught this class for a few hours. It was really cool. It's one of those situations where you feel like you get a lot of that kind of practical or real world knowledge. It's from somebody who's actually working in the industry at a pretty high level. But he had a PhD in psychology and was using that in his job. And one thing he told us was that basically when companies make changes to their website or their app or something along those lines, it is almost always, like 95% of the time, disliked by a majority of people. You could probably argue that the psychological theory behind this is we actually like familiarity. Like we are effectively in our brains predisposed to enjoying things we find familiar more. It's actually one of the theories of attraction. A pretty famous study that you'll probably hear about because people redo it all the time at universities and stuff. It's basically if you actually take a picture of yourself and then take a mirrored picture of yourself, most people themselves prefer the mirrored picture because when you look at yourself, you typically look in a mirror and you see the flipped version of your face. But most other people prefer the non-mirrored picture of yourself because most of the time they just see you in your normal state, if that makes sense. This meant to show that we do like things we're used to. And effectively, my point here is that even when these big companies or apps make changes to their websites or whatever, even though everyone hates it at first, people tend to grow to like it if it's a good change. So a bunch of backlash immediately after publishing a change isn't indicative of whether or not it's a good change. You have to wait like 3 months and see how users feel then. If everybody's still freaking out, then yes, you may have genuinely made a bad change. It could be a poor design decision. But if things have simmered down and everyone has quieted up about it, then you could have made a good change and you just can't tell at first. I can only imagine how infuriating this is as a developer to not actually know until a few months down the line whether or not users are genuinely happy with what you've done. But either way, that's going to wrap it up for this one. As always, again, I thank you all for watching and I hope to see you all next time. Later.